You don't think about it anymore. Whatever happened, happened. It was a long time ago. You have moved on. You have built a life. You are functional, capable, and by most measures, completely fine. But then something small happens. A smell, a tone of voice, a certain kind of silence in a room, someone standing too close, a song playing in a shop, a feeling of being watched. And suddenly, without warning, without logic, without any conscious decision on your part, your body reacts, your heart pounds, your chest tightens, your breathing changes, your hands go cold, or your jaw locks, or your stomach drops. Your mind goes blank, or floods all at once. And the most confusing part? You don't even know why. You tell yourself, nothing is happening. I am safe. Why am I reacting like this? But your body doesn't hear you, because your body is not reacting to what is happening right now. It is reacting to what happened then. It is reacting to a memory that your conscious mind may have buried, minimized, or completely forgotten, but that your nervous system has stored with perfect, unfailing precision. This is not weakness. This is not craziness. This is not you being dramatic. This is trauma. And today, we are going to understand exactly why your body remembers it, even when your mind does not. Stay with me. What you are about to learn might change the way you understand yourself forever. Before we go any further, we need to get very clear on what trauma actually is, because most people have the wrong picture. When most people hear the word trauma, they think of war veterans. They think of catastrophic accidents. They think of survivors of violent crimes or natural disasters. And yes, those experiences absolutely cause trauma. But trauma is not defined by the size of the event. Trauma is defined by the impact it has on your nervous system. Trauma is what happens inside you as a result of what happened to you. Think about that distinction carefully. Two people can experience the exact same event and walk away with completely different outcomes, because trauma is not about the event itself. It is about whether your nervous system was overwhelmed in that moment, whether you had the resources, internal and external, to process what happened, whether you felt safe, supported, and able to make sense of the experience. And this means that trauma can come from experiences that the world might dismiss as not that serious. Childhood neglect, emotional abandonment, persistent criticism, witnessing violence without experiencing it directly, the sudden loss of a relationship, medical procedures undergone without adequate support, years of living in an unpredictable or unsafe environment. These experiences may not look dramatic from the outside. But if your nervous system was overwhelmed, if you felt trapped, helpless, or in danger with no way out, then your nervous system stored it as trauma. Psychologists now speak about two broad categories. Big T trauma, the events most people immediately recognize as traumatic, and little t trauma, the quieter, often repeated experiences that accumulate over time and shape the nervous system just as powerfully. Both are real, both matter, and both leave a mark on the body, whether the conscious mind remembers them clearly, vaguely, or not at all. To understand why trauma gets stored in the body, we first need to understand how the brain normally processes memory, because something very specific goes wrong during a traumatic experience, and understanding that is the key to everything. Under normal circumstances, when something happens to you, your brain processes it like this. The experience comes in through your senses. Your brain's emotional center, the amygdala, immediately evaluates it. Is this dangerous or safe? Does this need a response? If the experience is manageable, the amygdala passes the information to the hippocampus, your brain's filing system. The hippocampus takes the raw emotional experience and converts it into a narrative memory. It gives it a timestamp. This happened in the past. It gives it a context. This is what was happening at the time. It gives it a location in your personal story. This is where this event fits in the sequence of my life. Then, the prefrontal cortex, your rational thinking brain, reviews the memory, makes sense of it, and files it away. It becomes a story, something you can talk about, reflect on, and learn from. Something that feels like it belongs in the past. This is normal memory processing. The experience enters as a raw emotional event and exits as an organized, contextualized story. But here is what is absolutely critical to understand. This entire processing pathway depends on one thing: the experience being manageable enough for the system to handle it. When an experience is too overwhelming, too sudden, too threatening, or too prolonged for the brain's processing system to handle, that pathway breaks down. And what happens instead is the foundation of everything we are talking about today. Here is where everything changes. When a traumatic event occurs, when your brain perceives a threat that is overwhelming, inescapable, or life-threatening, the normal processing pathway we just described gets hijacked. The amygdala, your brain's alarm system, takes full control. It floods the body with stress hormones, adrenaline, cortisol. The survival response activates completely: fight, flight, or freeze. And in this state of extreme activation, the hippocampus, the part of the brain that is supposed to give the memory a timestamp and a context, goes partially offline. Research by neuroscientist Bessel van der Kolk, author of the groundbreaking book The Body Keeps the Score, has shown that during traumatic events, the hippocampus is significantly suppressed, which means the brain cannot do what it normally does: convert the raw emotional experience into an organized narrative memory. So, what happens instead? The experience gets stored differently, not as a coherent story with a beginning, middle, and end, not as something that feels like it happened in the past, but as fragments. Raw sensory pieces: the smell, the sound, the physical sensation, the feeling in the body, the overwhelming emotion. These fragments are stored not in your conscious narrative memory, but in your body, in your nervous system, in your muscles, and your breath and your gut. And because they have no timestamp, because the hippocampus never got to label them as "this happened in the past," they do not feel like memories. They feel like present tense reality. They feel like right now. This is why a trauma survivor can be perfectly calm one moment and in full physiological crisis the next, triggered by a smell, a sound, or a physical sensation that their conscious mind cannot even identify as a reminder of the original trauma. The mind may have no clear memory, but the body has stored every detail. There is a phrase that has become central to the modern understanding of trauma. You may have heard it: the body keeps the score. It is the title of one of the most important books ever written about trauma, by psychiatrist and researcher Bessel van der Kolk. And it describes something that is now backed by decades of neuroscience research. Your body is not just a vehicle for your mind. Your body has its own memory system. And that system stores traumatic experiences with extraordinary precision, in ways that bypass conscious awareness entirely. This is called somatic memory. Somatic simply means relating to the body. And somatic memory refers to the way traumatic experiences are stored as physical sensations, muscular patterns, and nervous system states, rather than as conscious, verbal memories. Here is what this looks like in real life. A person who was physically threatened in childhood may walk through adulthood with permanently raised shoulders, a protective posture their body adopted during danger and never released. A person who experienced emotional suffocation in a relationship may develop a chronic tightness in their chest, a physical echo of the emotional constriction they felt. A person who grew up in a loud, volatile household may find that raised voices, even friendly ones, even on television, trigger an immediate physical response of contraction, stillness, and hypervigilance. Not because they chose to react, not because they are thinking about the past, but because their nervous system learned that raised voices meant danger, and that learning is stored in the body, not in the conscious mind. The body is not overreacting. The body is doing exactly what it was trained to do. It is following a survival script that was written during overwhelming experiences, and it will keep following that script until something intervenes and teaches it a new one. Now let's talk about triggers, because this word gets used a lot, and it deserves a proper explanation. A trauma trigger is any sensory experience, a sight, a sound, a smell, a touch, a taste, a physical sensation, that the nervous system has associated with the original traumatic experience. When the nervous system encounters a trigger, it does not think, it does not reason, it does not pause to ask whether the current situation is actually dangerous. It simply fires. It activates the same survival response that was activated during the original trauma, because as far as the nervous system is concerned, the trigger and the original threat are the same thing. This is the mechanism behind what is called a trauma response, and it is completely involuntary. It is not a choice. It is not a failure of willpower. It is an automatic nervous system activation. And here is what makes triggers so confusing and so difficult to navigate. They are often completely invisible to the conscious mind. You may not know what is triggering you. You may not be able to connect your body's reaction to any specific memory. You may feel the physical response, the racing heart, the constricted breathing, the sudden overwhelming emotion, without having any conscious awareness of what caused it. Because the trigger is not activating your conscious memory system, it is activating your somatic memory system. Your body remembers the connection, even when your mind has no access to it. And this is why trauma survivors are so often misunderstood, both by others and by themselves. Because from the outside, the trigger looks insignificant, a smell, a sound, a phrase, nothing. But from the inside, it feels like the original threat is happening all over again. Because to the nervous system, it is. When the nervous system perceives a threat, whether real or triggered, it activates one of three primary survival responses. You have almost certainly heard of two of them, but the third one is the one that most people living with trauma know most intimately and understand the least: fight. The nervous system mobilizes energy toward confrontation. In the face of a perceived threat, the person becomes angry, defensive, combative. They push back. They argue. They become aggressive or controlling. What looks like anger or aggression from the outside may actually be a trauma-driven nervous system trying to fight off a threat that only it can perceive. Flight. The nervous system mobilizes energy toward escape. The person becomes anxious, avoidant, restless. They leave situations. They avoid relationships. They run from anything that feels remotely threatening. Chronic anxiety, workaholism, hyperactivity, and compulsive busyness are often flight responses dressed in socially acceptable clothing. Freeze. And here is the one most people don't fully understand. When the nervous system determines that neither fighting nor fleeing is possible, when the threat feels completely inescapable, it shuts down, like a rabbit playing dead, like a computer crashing under too much pressure. In humans, freeze shows up as dissociation, a sense of not being fully present in your body or in reality. Numbness, emotional flatness, inability to feel, going through the motions of life without truly inhabiting it. Fogginess, difficulty making decisions, a persistent sense of disconnection from yourself and the world around you. Many people living with unresolved trauma spend years, sometimes decades, in a low-level freeze state, functioning, appearing fine, but not truly alive to their own experience, not fully present, just surviving. And the heartbreaking thing about freeze is that it is so quiet, so invisible, that the person often does not even recognize it as a trauma response. They just think that's how they are. Let's get very practical now, because unresolved trauma does not stay quietly in the past. It shows up every single day in behaviors, patterns, relationships, and physical symptoms that most people never connect to trauma at all. Here is what unresolved trauma looks like in everyday life. It looks like difficulty trusting people, even people who have given you every reason to trust them. Because your nervous system learned that people are unpredictable, unsafe, or unreliable, and it applies that lesson to everyone, regardless of the evidence. It looks like people-pleasing and an inability to say no, because somewhere in your history, keeping others happy was a survival strategy, and your body still believes it is. It looks like chronic physical symptoms with no clear medical explanation, persistent pain, fatigue, headaches, digestive problems. Because the body is still carrying tension that was never released. It looks like emotional dysregulation, reacting to small things with disproportionate intensity, because your nervous system is calibrated for a level of threat that no longer exists in your current life. It looks like self-sabotage, unconsciously undermining your own success, happiness, or relationships. Because some part of you never learned that good things can be safe. It looks like hypervigilance, always scanning for danger, always waiting for something to go wrong, never fully relaxing, even in genuinely safe environments. And it looks like a persistent, unnamed sadness, a sense of emptiness, a feeling of being fundamentally different from other people, of being broken in a way that cannot be explained or fixed. None of these are personality traits. All of them are nervous system adaptations. All of them made perfect sense once, and all of them can change with the right understanding and the right support. At this point, it is important to talk about two clinical terms because understanding them can be profoundly validating for people who have been searching for language to describe their experience. The first is post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. PTSD is a recognized mental health condition that develops in some people after experiencing or witnessing a traumatic event. Its defining features include intrusive memories and flashbacks, where fragments of the trauma replay involuntarily. Nightmares, avoidance of anything associated with the trauma, persistent negative changes in mood and thinking, and hyperarousal, a state of constant alertness, irritability, and exaggerated startle response. PTSD was first formally recognized in war veterans, but it is now understood to affect survivors of any overwhelming traumatic experience: accidents, abuse, assault, disaster, loss, and more. The second term, and this one is particularly important, is complex PTSD, or CPTSD. CPTSD develops not from a single traumatic event, but from repeated, prolonged trauma, especially trauma that occurred in early childhood, in close relationships, or in situations where the person felt they had no escape. Examples include childhood abuse or neglect, domestic violence, growing up with a parent with severe mental illness or addiction, or prolonged exposure to environments of fear and control. CPTSD carries all the features of PTSD, but adds additional layers: profound difficulties with emotional regulation, a deeply damaged sense of self and identity, persistent shame and guilt, difficulty forming and maintaining relationships, and a worldview shaped entirely by the expectation of danger. Many people walking around today carry CPTSD without ever having received that diagnosis, or any diagnosis at all. They simply believe they are broken, difficult, too much, not enough, fundamentally flawed. They are not. They are survivors of overwhelming experiences whose nervous systems adapted the only way they knew how. Now, the part that matters most. What actually helps? And I want to be very deliberate here, because healing from trauma is not the same as healing from other mental health challenges, and this distinction is critical. Traditional talk therapy, sitting in a chair and talking about what happened, can be deeply valuable. But for many trauma survivors, talking alone is not enough, because the trauma is not primarily stored in the verbal narrative parts of the brain. It is stored in the body, and the body needs to be included in the healing process. This is why the most effective approaches to trauma healing are ones that work with the body, not just the mind. The first approach is EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. EMDR uses guided bilateral stimulation, typically side-to-side eye movements, while the person holds a traumatic memory in mind. This process appears to help the brain reprocess stored traumatic memories, essentially completing the processing that was interrupted during the original overwhelming experience. EMDR has extensive research support and is recommended by the World Health Organization as a first-line treatment for PTSD. The second approach is somatic therapy. Somatic therapy works directly with the body's stored trauma. The therapist helps the person notice and safely process the physical sensations, tensions, and nervous system patterns that hold the trauma, allowing the body to complete survival responses that were frozen in place during the original experience. Approaches include somatic experiencing, developed by Peter Levine, and sensoromotor psychotherapy. The third approach is trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy, TFCBT. This adapted form of CBT helps people identify and change the thought patterns and beliefs that developed as a result of trauma. The deep-seated beliefs that the world is dangerous, that people cannot be trusted, or that they themselves are fundamentally broken or unworthy. The fourth approach is nervous system regulation. Before deep trauma processing can happen, the nervous system needs to learn that safety is possible. Techniques like breathwork, grounding exercises, mindfulness, and body-based practices help build what trauma therapists call a window of tolerance, a regulated nervous system state from which deeper healing can safely occur. And across all of these approaches, one element is consistently present in successful trauma healing: safe relationship, with a skilled therapist, with a trusted community, with people who can witness your experience without judgment, without minimizing, and without requiring you to perform wellness before you feel it. Healing from trauma is real. It is possible. It is not quick and it is not linear, but it is absolutely, genuinely possible. Before you go, I want to leave you with something that I hope changes the way you relate to your own body and your own history. Everything your body has done, every tightening, every shutdown, every hypervigilant scan of the room, every overwhelming reaction that seemed to come from nowhere, was an act of protection. Your nervous system was not malfunctioning. It was doing its job with extraordinary precision and dedication. It stored what needed to be stored. It activated when it needed to activate. It kept you alive through experiences that were genuinely overwhelming. The fact that those responses are still running, long after the original threat has passed, is not a failure. It is loyalty. Your body has been loyal to your survival in the only way it knew how. But here is what I want you to understand. The same nervous system that stored the trauma can learn something new. It can learn that the threat is over. It can learn that safety is possible. It can learn new responses to replace the ones that were written in darkness. This is not easy work. It takes time and it takes the right support. But it is not beyond you. You are not broken. You are not too damaged to heal. You are a human being whose nervous system responded to overwhelming experiences, and that nervous system can change. If this video helped you understand yourself or someone you love a little more clearly today, please share it. Because somewhere, right now, someone is sitting with reactions they cannot explain, feelings they cannot name, and a body they do not understand. And they deserve to know that what they are experiencing has a name, that there is a reason, and that there is a way through. Take care of yourself. Be patient with your body. It has been working very hard on your behalf for a very long time.